Okay, so I think a lot of participants have already logged in, so we'll start the webinar. I'll just make introduction. I'll start with introduction. Good evening, everyone. I'm Akash Puri from India Sotheby's International Realty. Jointly with the leadership team, Amit Goel, Ashwin Chadda, Sameer Saran, Sudarshan Sharma, Sabah Ali, Yatindra Soparna, and all of us at India Sotheby's International Realty, we welcome you to the second session of our Global Luxury Realty Conclave. In less than 8 weeks, COVID-19 has reordered virtually every industry in the world, but few more rapidly than real estate and development. Now that hundreds of billions of people have gotten a new taste of how important home actually is as a safe haven, a de facto schoolhouse, an impromptu remote office, and a forced familial psychological petri dish, the spaces we live in, and more importantly, what we demand of them, stand to look profoundly different post the coronavirus world. Our discussion this evening about taking the right bets with real estate is scheduled for 60 minutes. There will be three tracks that we aim to cover in about 30 minutes and 15 minutes for Q&A. Viewers are welcome to post questions as we go along, and our panelists will try to answer as many in the slotted time. I will now give a brief introduction about India Sotheby's International Realty. Set up in 2014 in India, we're a team of over 50 professionals from private banking, luxury, hospitality, and of course, real estate business, and bring together decades of transactional advisory experience. Our global presence spans across 71 countries with 1,000 offices and 23,000 advisors. In the year 2019, Sotheby's International Realty delivered a global property sales volume of $114 billion. Our brand heritage, global network, and prop tech marketing platforms makes us the largest, most unique luxury real estate advisor worldwide. Your home has not only not borne any mark-to-market losses, but also come to your families and your protection. I'm sure it would have appreciated somewhat mentally in these unprecedented times. We present to you a video to demonstrate how your residential home has stood the true test of time. Thank you for that. I would now like to introduce Gaurav Kani. He's a partner tax practice and national leader for real estate at Ernst Young India. Gaurav will moderate the session this evening. Over to you, Gaurav.
Thanks, Akash, for that. My name is Gaurav Kanik and I lead the real estate practice for EY India. We have a very exciting panel today, and we are joined this very early morning from New York by Stan Fonte, who is the Senior Global Real Estate Advisor at Sotheby's International Realty, New York, from the New York office. We have Sameer Jasuja, founder and co-CEO and CEO of P Analytics Prop Equity. He's joined us today, a very well-renowned expert in the property market and a complete whiz kid on all the numbers and statistics which are there in the real estate market. And we have Rahul Agarwal, who's a senior assistant vice president from Invest India, who will provide us an overview of the Indian economy and some of the macro trends that will be there. If you look at, really before we start off with the panelists, just a quick point on the Indian real estate sector as such. Before the COVID-19 pandemic even struck India, there were headwinds in the market, but there was some green shoots there in the market as well in the month of March, and we were seeing a number of sales of the residential market picking up. Commercial assets for the last 2-3 years have been really cherry picked have really been the toast of all of the investors globally and in India, and a number of transactions have happened in that space, and pretty large ones, with large number of sovereign wealth fund, pension funds, and long-term investors investing in them. Given the pandemic which has happened, the question now in the last 2 months, there have been no residential sales as such in India. And going forward, one would have to look at, what are the new processes that one would look to put in the new normal, whether it's digitalization or other processes, because there may not be that much contact between the person buying and the person selling. And that would be a new change. We could also see some emergence of new asset classes and like warehousing, which would pick up given the increased e-commerce activity that we are witnessing, and also things around data centers, given the amount of data that has been used and number of the large majors also putting their data in India because of regulations, etc. Another interesting paradigm would be to see what is the impact on the commercial asset spaces, given that work from home has picked up in the last 2 months and corporates are beginning to realize that they can work quite a bit from home. So how that would impact commercial asset places would be interesting. Shopping malls have been shut for the last 2 months, and they are hoping to be opened in the next couple of weeks, starting from June 8th, and hopefully that should see more action in that side of the market as well. The other part which one needs to look at is, what will happen to co-working? Will we have more co-working spaces next to residential areas, or would we see, design changes in co-working as well? And the last part I would like to touch upon is, student housing. That was a sector which has been picking up speed in the last year or so, and it would be interesting to see how that particular segment also picks up, given that college and universities are still shut and looking to only open in July or August, and there is a lot of online teaching which is going on. And so how will students come back to the campuses, etc., would also play a key role in determining demand around this. But I think on the whole, I think there's a good chance of this sector rebounding back. The government has taken various measures to increase liquidity in the market, have reduced repo rates. Hopefully that will be translated into lending by the banks, and also reduction in the interest rates, which should boost demand. So given that backdrop, I'd like to start with my first panelist for today, Rahul Agarwal from Invest India, and a couple of questions which I'd like Rahul to answer. I think the first question that I would like to really put forth to you is, what are you seeing as the key macro trends in India and if you could just give your view on how Invest India is looking at that, and what do you think are the key sectors that would have a large amount of investments in the next 12 to 18 months?
Thanks so much. I think these are in a way exciting times. Not on the positive side, right? Usually, if you really see history, we haven't seen something like this happening in the modern economy. But I think I really want to highlight what we've done in the last decade or so, which kind of has enabled us to fight this pandemic much more strong. In terms of macro trends, the focus has been one on the infrastructure development in the last 2 decades or so, and specifically in the last 7-8 years, we have been on average spending between $80 and $100 billion on average just on our infrastructure. So creating that capital which can then return us further, right? So while you talk about roads, our energy sector, which is now far more, so our generation capacities have expanded amazingly. Railways, we had an amazing year of 0 deaths. So you can just imagine what we must have been doing at the back end that suddenly that entire Indian Railway is killing so many people and suddenly there are no deaths, and so on and so forth. And in addition to what we were doing on these famous sectors, we've been creating sector after sector, right? So if you really go back 20 years back, if we were creating one highway and we were making it a big story. But in last 1.5 year, we allocated about 400 cities for natural gas, right? City gas connections. And that was done in a jiffy, right? Nobody even realized that, actually implementation is happening in all of those cities. And now we are trying to do that all over India. Same story happened for for the 4G deployment, right? There was some bad news, but suddenly, the speeds have come up. We've become the biggest data consumer in the world. And it's just been, expanding from there. What is very important to know here is that India has actually become from, government, instead of only giving services, solutions only to a set population, has actually moved away from it and now started to give solutions to all, right? So, we have started to talk about housing for all, started talking about banking for all, healthcare for all. We provide insurance to 500 million people, which state is sponsoring, and sanitation for all, cooking gas for all, and now water connections to all. These are all very, very interesting things. What this has helped us is to reduce poverty, right? So we are actually, if you really consider India 130 crore people, for this group specifically, the market is right now only probably 0.1% of the entire 130 crore. What government is trying to do is trying to push a lot of these bottom of the pyramid people above, right? And there was a very interesting transition which happened in 2017. I'm not sure if many of you noted that a lot of people came out of poverty, and India actually became number 2 on highest number of poverty, the poverty list of the world. And in the same year, we also became number 3 on the list, right? So that has been the big change. COVID has impacted us, right? No doubt about it. And we believe it's in a shorter time we will have some concerns to handle. However, the way we have handled this entire pandemic by actually becoming the second largest PPE kit manufacturer, we have showed that the elephant can dance actually fairly fast, right? So that's where India's strength lies. And just to give you some numbers, and I'll quickly finish this one. 30 people in India move from a rural area to urban area per minute, right? In 2019, we had 34% of our population living in urban areas. By 2025, we will have 46% of our population living in our urban areas. Our digital economy is going to be 1 trillion. Right now, it stands about 200 million. The digital consumption, which we talk about, will jump from $50 billion to approximately $500 billion. So just think about that change, that those numbers which are going to impact, and automatically see what is the big change. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for that, Rahul. So, you did talk about the elephant can dance. In the last few years, it has been. So what do you see as the impact of, the US-China trade wars, which is currently in place? And will there be a shift to manufacturing bases into India, the supply chain shifting here? What's your view around that?
So yeah. I have slightly a biased view, right? I work for Invest India on that one, but and I wear an economic, so I'll take my economist hat here and I talk about that one. What has happened in last 18 months or so is that, that disruption which the world has seen, and it was not only this pandemic, right? The disruption was actually going on for a fairly long time. What it has shown is that, if you rely completely on one country, it's going to make your life more and more difficult every day. I'm not actually talking about any negative feelings or any negative emotions. Probably they are already there in the market, but if you invest in a portfolio, you would like to diversify. Till, for a good 2 decades, world did not realize that, because, probably no disruption actually occur at that level. What this pandemic in specific has done is that, world wants to diversify. And the problem of, so I don't want to have my facilities all at one place. I don't want all my eggs at one place. And that clearly is moving away from there. Secondly, what we have seen is, and I think that's probably emotionally and anecdotally, some people have told us, is that, people, the world is now focusing on building an alternative by buying from India. Probably in some sectors, it may not economically make sense. So that is why, I'm actually, and I'm if I really compare pre-COVID and post-COVID, and I think what has happened is that we were doing really good in some themes, right? Electronics we were doing exceptionally well, chemicals we were doing exceptionally well, digital economy we were doing very, very good, and all of that investment sets were coming into India. But this is now transitioning to a more broader based changes, right? Which how we are seeing that entire thing is that this is going to flip over to a very wide growth in India, instead of only a few sectors, few pockets growing faster, rest of the sectors growing far more slower. In addition to that, because you've mentioned that, what as a government, what government is trying to do is open up the country in a way, which has never been done in the past, right? So things about mining, which we've done, or the liquidity sector, the liquidity infusion, which we've done for real estate, where government has actually backed up and said, okay, I take that risk as well myself, and even for investment grade, we've gone below, right? Otherwise, we were always like, we'll only invest in AAA. So we have gone down and we have shown our commitment and our intent to get into the sector and provide that liquidity. So while I understand, you may say actually it's a smaller amount, but the impact is going to be far, far more larger in this.
Sure, Rahul. And talking about moving if we are going to look at a shift in the manufacturing base, or you're looking at the supply chain moving here, I think one of the issues which clearly is an issue for the industry is land acquisition. So your thoughts around that, and secondly, what if the manufacturing bases come into India? What do you see as a real estate play around this?
Sure. So I think this is very interesting. So as Invest India, broadly, if I really tell you, we are, as of today, we are working on $160 billion worth of FDI projects today. There are approximately, I think, 1,400, 1,500 projects within this 160 billion, which I mentioned. And all of them are actual projects which we are facilitating. They're not any commitments or as such. In all of these cases, about 1,400 cases, which I'm mentioning you, we actually did not face land acquisitions the kind we talk about in reality. So any investor, if you want to book a land parcel, most states provide online systems, right? You go on the system. For instance, I'll take the example of Madhya Pradesh. If you want to buy land there, just go on their portal, the GIS portal. You block the land parcel there, pay a nominal fee, then you go and visit the land parcel. If you like it, then you close, you pay make the final payments, and it's yours. If you don't like it, you'll get your money back, right? So that's the kind of system which we are working towards. In addition to that, Invest India is actually working on a investment clearance cell. I think that has already been announced, and a single window system, so that not only land, but the entire set of clearances, whichever have to be given, should be given through this window, and we'll make the lives of investor far more easier. In terms of the real estate play, I think that's where I think the real change will be visible. I want to take the example of Greater Noida, right? I think that's one area which has attracted amazing amount of manufacturing in terms of electronics companies going there. What we have done, in that area was, to bring in infrastructure one after the other, right? So, the new airport is coming there. Then, we are now building a multimodal transport hub there, a huge multimodal logistics hub there. And it's also the intersection point of the Delhi-Mumbai, the dedicated freight corridors. You'll be very surprised to know there was one land parcel which DMIC-DC built, so Delhi-Mumbai Industrial Development Corporation. It was approximately 200 acres, and about 3 years back, they came to us that they wanted to market that land parcel. Honestly, it did not take us more than a month to sell that entire land parcel, and and just one company actually took it. We were actually, so when it came to us, we wanted a lot of companies to come in there and all of that, but one guy came in and took the entire parcel. The interesting piece alongside that is that the real estate of the entire region, right? If you specifically pick that region, the prices have moved up substantially. There's been a lot of expats moving into the area, and suddenly the development of that entire piece is starting. So I think it's pretty straightforward there, right? So industry is coming in there, and automatic real estate development happening. I expect that to be growing for much more. And this is just one case study. There are many more in the country as of now.
Sure. So another related question, we did talk about all the things around infrastructure and those sort of activities. Uh, given the recent reforms which the government has introduced and the very bold reforms, and specifically around the PSUs and only a few PSUs being allowed to really function in particular sectors, and there would be privatization, etc. Do you see a large amount of land monetization as part of this privatization, which will take place in the next couple of years, and thereby, providing more housing or commercial establishments? And if that happens, would that have a significant impact on the prices?
I think prices, you'll be the better judge. But in terms of, I think we started working on this concept about 2 years back. And finally, in the last budget, the last union budget, we got an approval for, so just before the union budget, actually, we got a cabinet approval for asset recycling of non-core assets, of PSUs. That was actually the starting point for us to start working from there. Actually, it talks about not only real estate, but it talks about a set of assets. But for the specific, as in because we are discussing real estate here, on that one, I think we started working with multiple PSUs. In fact, we did a couple of workshops also to come out with newer models for while you say monetization, I would rather say asset recycling of not only land parcels but also constructed real estate of these PSUs, which are right now either on lease or not being utilized by these entities in a more meaningful and more in a way where we can generate more economic value out of that. So definitely we are actually considering. So there have been some discussions around if REITs can be bought out by some of these PSUs in a manner which Embassy has done. And we can invite global real estate managers to actually come and manage that prime, and I would call that prime real estate because it has been taken up over some of that is 40 or 50-year-old, and it lies in the center of the city with beautiful and very high rental yields to start with. We just believe if we can add a little more professional management in that one, the yields can go further up and can generate more values for both the lessees as well as the lessor.
Yeah, that's an interesting point you bring up, Rahul, because that was what I was coming to. That if we have land, we have completed assets, and if we put in the completed assets into a REIT and then lease it back to the PSU or the corporates, what better landlord than to have and tenant to have than the government of India? That's more or less a short rental, and therefore that gives some uplift on the REIT. So hopefully, your prediction will be that those REITs happen, and I'm sure there'll be a number of global managers who would be very interested to pick that up as a project. So my last question to you is that in view of the pandemic and situation that we are in, the number of reforms that we have undertaken, what are the 2-3 sectors that you think will pick up investments in the next 12 to 18 months, and specifically anything around real estate subsectors that you think will pick up?
Okay, so I think 2 or 3 things I'd like to highlight, but I think I've made that point to be far more broad-based than what we've seen before. But I think in terms of, I think if you really see, it's a very unique situation. This is going to be, instead of I actually seeing if the entire sector goes down or a part of it, takes the bigger hit. That's what we have to judge. So I think you actually mentioned initially that the concern on shared economy. That's one economy which we were talking about. We were all gung-ho about that. This is going to be doing really beautifully. Co-working spaces, co-living, and all of that will do very, very well. And now suddenly, I'm not sure if I even want to see somebody in my room, in my office room. Forget about in my house or in my living room. So I think that's why it's more about certain pockets which may not do well initially, right? And but in terms of sectors, I think we should see broad-based recovery. But still, to add some of the sectors which I believe, I think healthcare is definitely one of the sectors. This is going to attract capital not only in India but also across the board. There'll be infections, right? We've already seen infections going past 6.3 million. It's going to be further more, right? If you really look at that chart, it's only going up. It's you don't see that normal curve moving downwards. MSMEs, I believe, is going to be very, very interesting. The entire intention of the government and entire focus on pushing them to do Atmanirbhar Bharat, right, which is self-reliant India, is going to be very critical. They've actually released, and yesterday the definition was further given extension by to 250 crores worth of turnover. That further gives impetus and includes more MSMEs. We're going to, we will continue to ease out their pain, and we believe they are going to do a lot. In fact, I personally believe India has, so the biggest story of India is IT, right? And a lot of IT got created by Indian entrepreneurs, right? And we honestly believe that these MSMEs have wherewithal to actually grow and and become your customers for that matter, right? The luxury real estate. They were the ones actually who used to buy real estate in big numbers, right? Luxury, super luxury, everything, right? So small, we don't realize sometimes, these are the guys who have that money power. We want to make sure that, they come up again. There's a very interesting mention of wealth in this year's economic survey, right? A lot of people used to talk about that India does not appreciate the concept of wealth, but economic survey actually mentioned that we will be focusing on wealth creation, and how we can expand the footprint of wealth in India in the entire Indian context. So this is now beyond savings when I say wealth. So that's all related to this concept. So MSMEs in particular should be a focus area for the entire thing, and then manufacturing, which comes out because of diversification, which we believe is going to happen fairly fast from China. I think these three sectors should be the first ones to move along from here, and then I still feel broad based.
Thank you, Rahul, for a very insightful discussion, and you've answered so many of our questions, and thanks a lot for that. So now moving on to Stan, all the way from New York. I think all of us will be very interested to hear about investing in your country as such, and in particular New York or any other cities that you have in particular. So the opening question would be that why would you suggest investing in the US, or in particular any New York or any other cities?
Well, first of all, thank you so much for including me. So many of the people on the screen and names I see below, but without faces, are people I met in New Delhi at the Conclave just over a year ago, and we had so many great opportunities to share ideas. And here we find ourselves in a new world with some new opportunities and new challenges. I can tell you, since I've left New Delhi and stayed in close touch with so many of my new friends there, I was so struck at the time by the extraordinary opportunity that India presents as a nation, as a growing nation, and as a nation putting together its infrastructure. So I left there just inspired by your opportunity within your country, and with the idea and the knowledge, because we were seeing it. In point of fact, at that very conference, we were signing not for someone, Rahul, who was at the savings level, but someone who had reached the wealth level. And we were selling them a very large apartment in New York City. And maybe because of the good energy of all of my friends in New Delhi and all of the new friendships we made, we were celebrating with drinks, a signed contract with an Indian family buying a very substantial multi-million-dollar property. So I think that there is a big question in the air as we arrive at this. I'm in the morning, you're in the evening. I woke up to my news as you did. I saw that Moody's has affected the credit rating that you all are working under, which could create as much opportunity as it may impact opportunity. We see all of these things as always. Any movement is opportunity. So for New York City, and yesterday I'll be able to bring to you some really fresh information from markets like Miami and Toronto and Los Angeles and Chicago and Dubai, because I sat on a similar panel of top brokers who are representing developers in all of those places. So I'll be able to share that a little bit with you, but maybe I should just start with New York City since that's where I am. And I think that what is most interesting about what we're going through is I think it is not just COVID It is not just the unrest that we're seeing, and certainly every television screen in the world can see what's going on in the streets of our beautiful cities. I think there is a moment of some generational change for the United States of America. We are obviously a very mature economy. We have a very mature, if somewhat aging infrastructure in some places. And what we're really seeing, I believe, is the bubbling up of this generation. And we've seen this before. I think we're seeing it now. So what I believe about that is that there will be moments now where people become very unsure about the short term. And that's the perfect time to invest in real estate. As the quote on the video said so smartly from one of our former presidents about the value of real estate, I'm enjoying my quarantine by reading Pulitzer Prize winning autobiography of Washington by Ron Chernow. If you have not read that book and you're interested in reading about an extraordinary human being who just lived a life of everything working out, it's kind of nice to read. It gives us a nice hope that one could have everything work out as they go through their life in a positive way. Real estate right now in New York and Miami and Chicago and in Boston and in Los Angeles, all throughout the country, Toronto and Canada, is basically on pause. So I heard one mention earlier, I think it was you, Gaurav, at the outset talking about housing, or maybe it was Akash, around schools. Boston is a good example of that. Harvard University is discussing how they will approach the fall semester. I think they've not made final announcements there as they wait to see how the first waves of opening go. But the real answer is there would be no better opportunity to buy student housing, multi-unit, 3 to 4 units in Cambridge than if there is an opportunity to do so. So I love the fact that you've used this 12 to 18 month window, because it is the perfect way, I believe, especially in the United States today, to think. We have so many moving parts. We've just come out of COVID. The country is now having unrest on the streets, which has stopped all of those stores from reopening literally on the day in Los Angeles, as an example. On the day they were to reopen, they had to close for another reason. All of this with the backdrop of what will probably be the loudest presidential debate and battle for the US presidency that we've seen, which is also traditionally, this is my 20th year in New York real estate, and every presidential election by about September, the rhetoric gets so loud that people start to pull back and wait a moment and observe. So what I would say in a nutshell is, for those of your team, for my Sotheby's International Realty partners that are here, and for anyone in India that is looking for some safety with a little bit of a discount, right? Quality investment, which when you pull off the lens of COVID, pull off the lens of protest, pull off the lens of a presidential election, and ask yourself, where will the United States of America be in 12 to 18 months? Where will New York City be in 12 to 18 months? Then what you'll find is those who have that vision to look forward will do very well. Whether you're a developer, whether you are buying a trophy property because your company in India has done so well in these moments, or whether you're investing in a multi-unit looking for some return on investment and future value.
Sure, Stan, that's good. So quick question, if you were to name one place where you would suggest people on this webinar to look at investing from a real estate perspective in the US, pick one city and one area which you would think would be interesting and worthwhile.
Well, I guess I will. Here's what I would say. I would say that it just depends on how much money one is investing and what the goal of the capital is. If one is investing a significant amount of money, then I think that New York City and the tiny island of Manhattan is the most safe over the long term. This is a city which has, everyone thought after 9/11, no one would want to live in big cities anymore. Everyone thought after the Great Recession, we would stop building. These are counter cycles, and real estate is one of the most counter-cyclical of all of the asset classes. And it's very important to consider that. So if it were a significant investment, I would come first to the New York City market to see how that investment might be spread. Many of the people that we work with from India do want to have a space that they call a home in New York. And it's a place that they use as a base when they are traveling to New York to look at their investments and to make more decisions about how to continue to grow their investments as they're taking money and making money in this growing infrastructure of India. If the investment were smaller, then you might start to look at secondary cities to find out what the opportunities there are where you're not having to spend an average of $1,200 or $1,500 per foot to buy real estate, where you can buy real estate in the $500 per foot or $400 per foot range. So we're talking about mid-sized cities. Think about Chicago, think about Boston, think about Charleston, think about East Coast cities are a good idea. I think India has had more energy there because it's faster, whereas Asia has had more energy on the West Coast in Vancouver, Los Angeles, and San Francisco. So there are going to be a lot of opportunities around these cities. And one of the things that is equal to what I'm hearing from our first panelist, Raul, is that companies are changing their footprint. We are hearing from Google and from the major tech companies that they are going to be moving into regional hub infrastructure concepts so that they can better promote a work from home and work from office environment, the hybrid lifestyle, right? We've swung the pendulum, everyone's stuck at home, and we used to all, go to the office no matter what, snow, sleet, sick. And of course we went to the office sick and got everybody sick. But now it's clear that one could very effectively work at the office maybe 3 days a week when it is good for you. And then the other 4 days a week, work from home, work remotely, or even work in one of these regional hubs. So it's big country. And so what I've always suggested, especially at the Conclave when I met so many people, was many Indians, as you know, and I remember some of the statistics about how many US doctors are Indian, right? I mean, there is so much family here. There's already so many generational roots that have been planted in the United States of America from India. And real estate always grows because people connect. So the first thing I would be asking myself isn't just what did Stan Ponte say about where my money should go. My first question would be, who in your family, which one of your friends, who did you go to college with, who is living and working in the United States? What city are they in? What is their experience there? Would I like to have a home there? What are their thoughts about investing in that city? And then working through Sotheby's International Realty India, there are Stan Pontes in every single market of the United States. We have broad global penetration, but there's no individual country that has as many offices and as many brokers. There's not even a town where there isn't a Sotheby's International Realty office. So I would suggest that you take the macro, which right now is very low demand, a basic pause. We have multiple layers of the pause, which I think also include a generational moment of learning, growing. It's young people on the streets, just like they were 50 years ago, young people in the streets. There is a generational need for equality, for representation, and for less space between the upper and middle and lower classes. And that is a disruptive moment, and we're going to see it happen and continue. And it is a perfect moment to find a good opportunity so that the capital is safe and you're buying that safe capital at a discount because there is less demand in the market right now. you get to move around with cash or the ability to borrow. Mortgages are a little easier, I think, to get in the United States, and there are a number of banks, especially in New York City, that are very open to lending. Hard to get above 50%, but certainly if you're coming in with 50% cash, there are many lenders here that will write you a loan for the other 50%. So that's how I would approach any one of the viewers of this podcast. Start where you have connection and then move out from there, like the growth of a tree, right? It grows organically. And I think real estate grows organically. And I think that moving organically is also very smart financially.
Okay, thanks, Dan. Thanks a lot for your very insightful, about the market in the US. And I think your investment strategy, as well as what you mentioned as to what should be the factors when choosing a location or the apartment, etc., are very insightful. And I'm sure many of people who joined the webinar today would look at Sotheby's to give them advice and to be able to guide them in a good manner. So coming back to India and to Samir, I would like to come back to the Indian market and a few questions to you on that, Samir. One, what was your idea about how the demand was of the real estate market pre-COVID up to March, and how do you see demand post in the new normal, which is now, or June onwards as we embark on the lockdown being removed? How do you see this emerge, and what do you see as the key demand sector? Which are the places where you see key demand? Samir, you're muted. You'll have to unmute yourself.
Is it now?
Yeah, Samir, you're on
Audible?
now. Yes, audible. If you just speak a
Thanks.
little loud.
First of all, I wanted to thank the India Sotheby's team for having me. I'm going to be a little bit more negative compared to the other two panelists. It seems like it's fallen against the motion. India was going through a severe crisis in the real estate sector pre-COVID as well. There were multiple reasons for that. There was lack of execution by the developers, projects getting delayed severely, investors having lost a lot of their money, projects getting stuck, stalled, bank finance not being easily available to the developers, and many other factors that led and had created the perfect storm in the real estate sector pre-COVID, and I would say for the short term, this is the last nail in the coffin, as I would put it, for the real estate sector for the very short term. Money is not going to be that easy to come by. Under construction projects, where about 480,000 units are already stalled. There are another 7 lakh units that are supposed to come up in the next 2 years. A large number of them are not going to see the light of the day. There's been severe amount of consolidation in the Indian real estate sector over the last 3 to 4 years. There are only a handful of developers of repute that are left, who are launching and successfully launching there too. So the biggest bastion of buying real estate from an individual owner point of view was the IT sector. And if you look at what is happening as we speak right now, the IT sector is very insecure, right? Because as you see globally, our IT sector is dependent 95% on global business, right? Global business has come to a standstill. If you look at commercial real estate, we were absorbing about 60 million square feet of annual space in a year. This year's projections are 15 million at best. There is job insecurity. There have been a lot of layoffs, right? At this point in time, we cannot deny that, right? So short term, there's going to be a lot more pain, as I see it, because real estate is a very lumpy asset. It requires a lot of capital investment. There is a lot of insecurity in the air, and rightfully so, because we don't know how this whole COVID thing will play out in the next 6 to 12 months. So people are going to hold on to cash. They're not going to be as irrational as the stock markets are. They've gone up 10% in the last 4 days, with only bad news coming. So that's my short-term take on real estate. There are tremendous amount of opportunities that will come by for the investor. I think there's going to be a lot of distress opportunities, which I think everybody who has cash and surplus cash should look at considering, because the real estate market is the only market that is going to give you short returns when you buy distress. As far as the capital markets are concerned, if you get onto them anytime now, you could lose your shirt even now, because we are heading for a recession. That's what everybody in the world is saying. I don't know whether that's true or not, but all the global economists are saying this is going to be perhaps one of the worst recessions coming. If that is to be believed, then one would highly recommend people to buy distressed assets, people to buy ready to move in homes. Trusting developers with under construction properties is going to be a little bit of a risk. There are the top 10 names in the country who you can still go with and get excellent deals. Subvention deals have started to hit back into the market. You have 1090 schemes, so all you need to do is put 10% of the money down and 90% on possession. Developers like Godrej are offering such schemes now. So net, not a very positive short-term view. I would like to say that opportunities will only be there in the distressed sector. So distressed assets going to be a lot. So you can cherry pick, do a lot more research than typical Indians do. They think if they know one thing is real estate, which is unfortunately not the case. Supply demand dynamics have totally changed in every market. You have to really do a lot more research to pick the winning horse. These are my 2 bits, and I'm happy to answer your next question because I think I've spoken a lot more.
Samir, I think that is a very realistic, I think, estimate of where this sector is. And I think you picked up a good point on, distressed assets, ready to move in homes being a better bet, and taking a more long-term view than, being myopic and short-term in the short term. And the point on the stock market is interesting. But okay, if you were to look at the market, where would you look at, which markets or cities would you look to invest or, buy in from your perspective?
See, if I am looking at distressed assets, right, I think if we already start talking to some industry specialists, we also hear that the luxury market in Mumbai is down by 20% already, right? So when you're getting secondary markets and you're getting markets in Delhi also, in the tier 1 cities, wherever you are living, wherever you're comfortable with, where you understand a little bit more of real estate, you can control the real estate, that is the place where you should be living, you should be considering to invest. Distressed deals will be available across the board in luxury markets, especially at this point in time. And that would probably be the best time to buy from a long-term perspective, because a lot of developers were anticipating to be able to sell luxury at high rates, and they've not been successful over the last 1.5 years. And this has given them the perfect opportunity to bring down their rates. They were not willing to bring down their rates openly. They needed an excuse. This is that perfect excuse for them to say, okay, post-COVID, world has changed. I'm ready to accept the fact that everybody's purchasing power has come down. So I will most definitely bring down the rates to see absorption happen. And it will be a win-win situation for the developer as well as the buyer, because the buyer will benefit from the long-term appreciation and the developer will get some cash flows going, which are very badly needed to save the real estate sector at this point in time. And my last bit on the government side, the government doesn't really have too much money. The government doesn't really have too much money to keep on bailing out the real estate sector. There are more important sectors to bail out at this point in time. And the little that they can do with setting up the 25,000 crore fund to meet last mile funding for the stalled projects, there is so much money that is required just for the real estate sector that the other sectors will completely run dry if the government started supporting just the real estate sector. So we are in for tough times ahead, but definitely opportunities in the distress side. Retail uh, homes in posh colonies would come up for sale at discounted prices, because you see the person who's also got hit the most besides the migrant is the so-called rich person, the rich entrepreneur. He's had to pay salaries, his revenues are down to zero, there are huge debts that they've taken on, so they have to start liquidating, and one doesn't know when the demand and the real consumption will really kick in, so they're going to hurt the most. And when they're going to hurt, and stock markets, I don't know whether will they give them that liquidity to exit at those kind of pricing, or their portfolios would have already come down by 50%. So real estate is one asset class where they may look at exiting at lower price points, and that is the time to jump in. I can't hear you.
Sorry. So thanks, Samir, for that. The last question which I have, or just the second last question is, you talked about luxury homes, prices come down, ready to move in homes. What do you see are the changes, in amenities or connectivity? How will that impact residential markets?
See, all the views that I'm giving are for the next 12 months, right? I'm hoping Amit will have me the next year and I can talk more positively on the real estate sector like I did a year back. So from a short-term point of view, connectivity, we're not going to see so much connectivity impact real estate, right? Right now, typically, a home buyer will stay away even though the interest rates are low. He will buy because he will only buy when his job is secure, right? When his business is secure. Because this is a long-term purchase that he's doing. He has to take care of his EMIs for the next 15 years. If he doesn't know if his business is going to survive or what kind of impact his business is going to have or whether he will have a job or not, are going to be more important factors for him to take care of for the short term. To start going about purchasing real estate. Really speaking, real estate right now is for the savvy investors who have liquidity available to them, who can take a much longer term view and can put money on the table. And I would say there'll be only a handful of them as we speak for the next 12 months. So to answer your question, connectivity doesn't really matter. I'm recommending for people to buy distressed assets in prime areas where connectivity is already there, where social infrastructure is already there.
Sure. And my last question to you, Samir, is what do you see among the rental housing in India? I mean, it's an often spoken topic. It's never picked up because the yields are sub 3 net of tax. What do you see as, in the medium to long term view on rental housing?
See, again, logically speaking, with completed real estate coming down to its lowest level in the last 10 years, right? There was going to be a shortage of real estate and rental should have gone up. But with the current situation, again, with everybody's net new income less by 20%, less by 25% because of wage cuts, because of salary cuts, because of insecurity, nobody is going to be willing to pay higher rentals right now. And landlords are going to be more than happy to retain their current tenants because this is not a market to be, getting ballsy on, sorry for the wrong word, but you rather have a bird in hand is better than two in the bush. So you rather have your tenants staying on, paying the same rent. So I don't think the rents will get impacted on the downward side, but upward side also at this point in time is impossible to achieve as we see everybody, the whole economy suffer, every sector suffer. So in some way or the other, besides healthcare or one or two other sectors, I think 90% of the sectors are going to see from 20% pain to 100% pain.
So thanks, Samir. Those were really insightful remarks on the Indian market. I'll just pick up now some Q&A which I have received. Stan, you've talked extensively about New York and US. Some of the people attending their webinar would like to know that what's your view on London and Dubai? I mean, US you of course talked about quite extensively. Any views on London and Dubai markets?
Well, I would add, of course, with Ashwin on the line, he's specializing in London. But what I do know about the London market from my colleagues there is not unlike the US market. There had already been the kinds of decreases. Samir, you're using 20 to 25% ranges in some of the discussions that you're talking about. The New York City real estate market had already been down over 22% since its highs of 2016. The London market has experienced, because of Brexit, similar kinds of pauses and disruptions. So the current disruptions are really more pauses, I think, than the structural disruptions that caused these decreases. So I think there are good opportunities in London right now to buy real estate. And I know from speaking with my colleagues, Ashwin and Akash and Amit and Samir on the line, that there have been some major purchases from India in London. Yesterday, I was on a panel that included one of our Dubai professionals, and Dubai continues on, but also there has been a strong pause there. Dubai, one of the countries that took the most immediate and total action in terms of the shutdown. It was not slow or gradual. It was, we're staying at home and we're doing it right now. So it is, no one knows yet what will be post-COVID Dubai environment. I think Dubai has created an environment, again, of safety and luxury, and there will be some opportunities to cherry pick some discounts for those who are not doing well during all of these disruptors. Obviously, some people carry too much debt, have invested too heavily, and these are times where sometimes they have to turn to their real estate for liquidity. And that will create options, even at the ultra luxury areas of London, New York, and Dubai.
So, thanks, Dan.
If I could add to that about London, you know, our last webinar also we covered London, and there's always a huge demand and supply mismatch when it comes to real estate in London, and that would basically take in the pressure what London is facing right now. So we do feel that this, once we start standing on our feet, London would be ready to go quite well, and we have great opportunities that we could take offline. My email ID is mentioned on my screen. So if anybody would like to write about London specifically, happy to answer those offline. Thank you.
Thanks, Akash. Rahul, a question for you from one of the attendees. You talked about increasing urbanization, but do you think the pandemic situation will halt this process of urbanization and lead to a reverse migration, or already have you thought about this aspect when you're talking about increased urbanization?
A nice question. So just to, I just want to go back a little. So in Indian Railways moved approximately 8 billion people every year, right? What is really happening with these 8 billion people is something which we need to understand. All of these labor which work in the, which actually lives in the rural areas, they go back, so they keep working in the urban areas, but during the sowing season and then, when they reap it, they go back to the villages and then they again come back, right? So, it's not that we have two different sets of labor available in our rural and urban area, right? So that migration is a very regular process in India. What pandemic has done is that, to a large extent, because the jobs in the urban areas, when, there was nothing to do, right? They actually thought, it's better to move back to the rural area. So that's why that occurred. When I said 30 people move out, it's because urban areas have continuously, not only in India but across the world, have paid more and more. While I also said that manufacturing is going to increase in India far more. That's why we'll be able to attract more and more of this rural labor, which was happier at a lower income level, to actually move out to urban area for more incomes. So I'm pretty sure we'll actually increase it. In addition to that, when we say more manufacturing, that means we shift people from a lower income group to a middle income group, right? That is how we make people permanent residences, in urban areas, and that's actually your target area for real estate sector, right? That's going to increase furthermore, Because when you bring people to these organized manufacturing units, then you bring them for sure, permanently. Those never go back, right? So you might not have heard employees of companies going back to their rural areas because, now they don't have a job, or, that could have happened, but nobody would go like that, right? They'll search another job in the same city and will stay there.
So I think you answered that. So, one question to you. We talked about residential, you talked about, luxury houses, etc. From a subsector other than residential, what would you take as a subsectoral bet, whether industrial, that is warehousing, commercial, office, mall, where would you take a bet beyond residential? You're on mute, Samir. You have to unmute yourself.
Yeah, is it better?
Yeah.
Yeah, so my first bet would definitely be the residential sector. After that, of course, warehousing is looking to be very exciting for people because of various reasons that we all know about thanks to COVID. There'll be a lot more digital ordering at home, and warehousing space will be required in a much bigger fashion. And there isn't enough warehousing space in India, and there are very few players. And the rental yields in warehousing are above 10%. Compared to commercial yields, which are ranging between 7 to 7.5%, right? Commercial, I would like to stay away from right now because the destruction that could happen to the office sector is yet unknown. It is, I think, 12 months will let us know whether people are really adjusting to this work from home culture and they're happy about it, and companies are more than happy to give up office spaces. So I think 12 months one should definitely stay away from, whether it's co-working, whether it's office spaces, whether it's retail. Most definitely, one doesn't know how retail is going to get disrupted. So residential and warehousing are the only two bets that are really left in real estate to take at this point in time. To be safe, if one wants a rental yield, then you can look at some warehousing with long-term locked-in lease rentals. And otherwise, I think residential would be the best asset class to park your funds in when you get distressed opportunities.
Thanks, Samir. Dan, I think I will answer the last question. It's an interesting question, and it's totally reverse of what, we've been very gung-ho about investing in, whether New York or London or Dubai for that matter. Given the COVID crisis, and which is still going on, there will be definitely reduction in travel. It will take some time for people to think about traveling again, or, getting over the fear of traveling on a plane. Do you think that will have a significant negative impact on investing or investors in New York or any of the global markets outside the jurisdiction?
Absolutely. I think, Samir referenced me being rosy and optimistic. It's only because I've pulled my lens back for a full cycle. It isn't today. We are experiencing a complete freeze, essentially, in the sector of buying real estate. Anything, we haven't seen really any contract signed in Manhattan more than 10 over the past 10 weeks, over $4 million. And that's unprecedented. So this is a moment of pause, but it will quickly unpause unless we have new news coming at us. And it is simply, my optimism is mostly focused on, this is the time to buy. I had so many transactions I did 1 year after 9/11. And so many of those people said, my God, there's already a bidding war. I should have bought this property 10 months ago when no one was buying. And that's what I'm simply saying, is that we are already a mature market. We know demand will return. I don't know if it's in 12 months or 18 months. It may be a full 4 or 5 year cycle. We recovered from 9/11 really in 2003 through 5, not until 2005. Were we in a robust, you couldn't, everything sold the first day. So that was 4 years. After the Great Recession, it took us another 4 years for the market to rebound. So this is simply an opportunity with ready cash to enter the market with trusted advisors and say, I'm going to buy when everyone is telling me I'm crazy to buy, because I'm smart crazy. I'm crazy like a fox. I'm going to get a deal from someone who is being forced to sell, to liquidate, or someone who's leaving the city and just scared or running or whatever it may be. It's an opportunity moment. And I've seen two in my career in real estate. This is number 3. And I don't know when number 4 is, but I know today, as sure as I'm sitting here, that this is a buy opportunity in New York City.
Thanks, Stan. And I think we've come to the end of the, past 5:30 now. So first of all, I'd like to thank all the participants on the webinar for joining us this afternoon and spending the best part of the hour with us. And I hope you've got some valuable insights. And thanks to my fellow panelists, Samir, Rahul, and Stan. You guys were really great. I think some great ideas that you had and pretty realistic views on the real estate market. And clearly both on the global and on the Indian markets as well. Thank you very much. And with this, I'll hand it over to Akash. Thank you.
Thanks, Gaurav. I'm going to thank everyone again. So thank you, Stan, Samir, Rahul, and Gaurav for the session this evening. 2 takeaways that I found very interesting is that we as people are positive. So whether it be 9/11, and we thought that we would not probably have taller buildings in New York. We've constructed buildings which were taller than those that were devastated. Whether it be the financial markets, we've come around that and we've invested. So as what Stan pointed out, he said that real estate grows organically. So this is a pointer that we need to keep in mind. And as what Samir said, that it's a good time to look at distressed assets and prime locations. So these are 2 takeaways that I found interesting. It was an absolute pleasure to have our audience too with us, and we hope that they've been able to also take away some keen insights from this session. In case of any unanswered questions or questions that may arise later, your advisors at India Sotheby's International Realty team remain at your disposal. We look forward to seeing you next at 4:30 p.m. on June 9th for our next webinar on disruption as an opportunity. Please log on to our website, globalrealtyconclave.com, for details. Thank you once again and have a good evening.
Thanks.
Thank you very much. Take care. Thank you.
Thank you,
Akash. Thank you, Gaurav. Very good seminar. Very good. Nice to see you, Rahul.